Good morning, this is Eva. I'm going to be talking, continuing what I was doing before, which was going through True Detective Season 1, which is like one of my favorite shows, and going through, I guess, the themes of hero, villain, good, evil, and I guess really intergenerational trauma and how secrets can lead to sort of like a mass event that culminates in violence or victimization. In this case, sadly, it's about the victimization. Well, it's the sex trafficking of children, which is horrific. But it's actually based on, the show is actually based on a real case that happened. I'm pretty sure I went through it in one of my other videos. But this is pretty awful. Basically, like, this church in the vicinity of where they filmed this show, the preacher there and I think the sheriff, if not the sheriff, it was like sheriff's deputies were all involved in, I don't know what you want to call it, like a satanic cult where it was like children, like, I want to say infants all the way to like maybe late age teenagers were involved. Grotesquely, a couple of the victims were one of the perpetrators' boys, his own children. And there was like ritual sacrifice of animals. This went on for years. And they like boarded up the church windows, like, so you couldn't see in. And of course, like, since the sheriff's department was involved, they they covered the whole thing up for a long time. And there was women involved. It was kind of extraordinary in its awfulness. But the main point is it took place in, like, really the last place anybody would go looking for something like that, which was a very well thought of church in the community. Anyway, so that was kind of, if you haven't seen the show True Detective, I mean, each season's different, but this one had Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, and it basically, they play like two different types of, I guess, like they usually have like cops who are partners who don't, they have like kind of a beef with each other. This is that kind of show. It was like morally at the base of their moral selves, they both were against, evil acts, and wanted to make their communities safer places. And the way they felt that they could do that best is by basically going after who they deemed bad guys and or women, and putting, like, shining a light, a flashlight, if you will, like a spotlight on these evil acts, and like outing the people who were doing them. And in that way, it was like they felt like they were, fighting the good fight. The only difference was that they're completely different people. Like, Marty is your standard Southern. This all takes place in Louisiana. Marty, played by Woody Harrelson, is like your standard conservative Christian guy, family guy. He's got 2 young daughters, a wife that, it appears he has a good marriage from the outside. And, he definitely, this is over a 17-year span. He definitely had the opportunity to, save his marriage from falling apart, but he doesn't do that because he's very driven by ego and by attention and double standards, and he's very kind of like the super id and the id and then the shadow. So like he's very like his baser instincts, which carnal pleasures, and sort of his he doesn't pay a lot of attention. I mean, like, in public he appears to be like the perfect dad or whatever, family man, but he really doesn't spend that much time with his wife and kids, and they're kind of always, if he does spend time with them, it's like more superficial. They're not like really, he ignores a lot of things, especially with his daughters. And like later in the show, one of his daughters becomes very sexually active and gets in quite a bit of trouble, and she's, she badmouths him the whole time because like he had a long history of infidelity throughout the whole family life with younger women, and he was pretty out about that and didn't see that as really a moral problem. He just felt like it was his right, and that kind of ends up biting him in the what, because his one daughter's messed up from it, and she also has addiction problems. So on the other hand, that's Marty. Now Marty's like one of the good old boys. Like, everybody at the police station respects him. He's just like them. He has the same kind of interest in sports, or just he's just has the same. He's very like just like the Louisiana type stereotype, and he never, although he professes to be a Christian, which I'm sure he attends church and stuff, but it's like he never like really deconstructs what that means. He never really, it's pretty obvious through the show though, at the end when his wife leaves him and all that trouble with his older daughter, he ends up living by himself, and that's the time, those years where he actually really gets to know himself for the first time, because like clearly through the first whole part of the years that they're together as partners, and solving crimes. He has actually a longer period of being in the force than Rust. As being a murder detective, Rust comes and he's spent like he has like a really kind of sad story. His 2-year-old daughter was hit on a bicycle by a car and was killed, and that broke up his marriage. And then he immediately after that becomes kind of like a nihilist. Like he just doesn't believe in anything anymore. He doesn't really believe in people anymore. And he doesn't really have any. It's like he's like the Walking Dead. He's alive. He's very passionate about his job and about like basically he's kind of like a Batman. He really is. He's his whole any like excitement or passion or any time that he's animated in any way, if it's not about like philosophy or some of his off the wall, he's almost like a little bit like a darker version of Mulder from the X-Files. Like he's usually ranting about like philosophy or like just all kinds of crazy stuff about symbols and meanings and metaphor. Like he's constantly sort of an outlier. He's not like anybody else he doesn't have anything in common with anybody. He's like the popular loner. He gets this apartment, but since the death of his daughter and like he doesn't really feel like has anything to live for, but his quest to like devote his life to like going after people who are victimizing others. That's like his entire emphasis. That's like everything he is about. So like his apartment, like when he first brings Marty to his apartment, it's like really awkward because it's like he has like a mattress on the floor and it just has white sheets on it, and like there's no furniture. The only thing he has in there is like a sort of a entertainment center, but it's not for like pleasure, like watching movies or like to relax and stuff. It's like all it is just for his work. He has like all these videotapes of like the cases he works on. He always does all this sort of extensive research on his own about like serial killers and about like the psychology, and he's always trying to figure out like the why. Like why do people do what they do? Like how do you spot them sooner? Like how can you figure things out ahead of time? Like he's all about like getting to it. He wants to like save especially these children and young teens are in the sex trafficking ring. He wants to save as many, souls as he can before they're like taken advantage of. So it's like he takes that on as like his personal mission. So like he has like nothing personal. He does have like a crucifix over his bed, but then Marty's like, what? But you don't even believe in God. Like, why do you have that there? And then like of course he says something like very esoteric and very Russ, where he says, oh well, that's to bear witness, which is like he feels like every day he wakes up, it's like he recommits himself, I guess by like meditation, to his cause of like I don't know what you want to call it, do-goodery, like he feels like his purpose in life is to like be the witness, the whistleblower, the underdog. He feels like he is there to, he's the truth teller. He's the seer. He's the, you know, he's the one who's going to make everybody uncomfortable by talking about things that really the average person really probably doesn't want to talk about. But it's not like in a, he doesn't never demeans people, and he never is aggressive in pushing his stuff, his beliefs on other people. He just basically announces his beliefs all the time. Like, he's always just prolificating about whatever he's thinking, you know. He also has neurological damage because when his daughter died and his marriage broke up, he ended up going and working undercover for 4 years as a drug informant, undercover cop. And I think he's with like a motorcycle gang for most of it. And that's like one of the best lines to me in the whole show, where it's like he's with this really rough, tough biker, you know, who knows him really well. And the one line I thought was kind of fascinating is where he says, he leans into rest because they're drinking at a bar or something, and he says, I can sense the perimeters of your soul. I can tell that they're corrosive. There's something corrosive around your soul, like it's like battery acid. Or he says something like it's like acid, it's corrosive. Like, I'm not saying it right, but it's like basically what he's saying is you have like demons in you, like demons in like unhealed wounds. Like, you have a darkness that is, you are a haunted man, basically. You are, no matter how much you try to be like a force for good or a force to, and he uses a lot of violence to force like outing bad, when I say bad people, I don't mean they're all bad, but you know what I mean, like people who are committing acts against others that are heinous. And it's like this pivotal line, because it's like he's basically calling them out, like saying, oh, you act like you're such a, like you can judge us, but it's like clearly you haven't cleaned out your own, you haven't cleaned out your own house. Like, you're just like us. Like, your own unhealed wounds are like just as dark as like what we choose to do sadistically or whatever to other people. Like, it's like basically it's like he's saying like evil's evil, dark is dark, cruelty is cruelty, you know, like he's trying to call him out and saying the shadow that you keep, you know, blabbing about, that you've met your shadow, you've done all this work on, you know, like you know who you are, you know, like he's trying to say to him, like, you're still full of it, you know, you're full of what you see in others, what you point out in others. Even though you're good, you're still tainted. And I'm sure that's the grief from his daughter. Though he gets heavily involved in drugs because that's part of his job. But he gets really addicted to drugs. And then later, like, I don't know what it is, like 12, 13 years later, they thought they had solved these murders of this cult case. And it turns out that the person that they thought had done all the murders, it wasn't the only one. There was somebody else. Because the murders are still going on, even though the other guy the guy that they captured is dead. And so they end up getting back together. What was I trying to say about that? Oh yeah, when he comes back to meet Marty after all those years, I think it's like 17 years or 15 years or whatever. He's like a very obvious alcoholic. Though, like, he's a weird alcoholic. Like, he's a very high functioning. He never loses kind of control of his demeanor. Like, he's very like controlled. He's a control freak for sure. All right, so let's go over some of these concepts about what is, I mean, obviously, if there's like a cult that's like causing harm to children that have no ability to defend themselves, like, we know that's evil. But like, in this whole story, it's kind of like, you can tell, like, kind of the town that they're at, like, the town is in this bayou with their swamps. There's like horrendous poverty. Most of the jobs people have are like ruining their health. Either they're getting cancer or they, like, one lady, her like hands are all like sort of bent from or messed up raw from all the chemicals in the factory. And like, it's basically it's like there's money being made, like huge amounts of money, by all these people who are working in the communities. They're working hard ass jobs, like really not appealing work, and they're all struggling. None of them, they're just barely paying their bills. They don't have a future. Like, it's basically like very blue collar, almost like lower income blue collar. But all these industries, because it's very industrial, which is like all the water is really polluted. It's really industrial, so it's like there is massive amounts of money being made, but none of that money is going back to the people who are actually doing the labor. It's lining the pockets of the politicians who are all corrupt. It's lining the pockets of, like, whatever sleazeballs in all different kinds of bureaucratic positions are doing with it, are going back to companies, massive companies, gas, oil, and that's a theme. So, and it is kind of very Southern Gothic. Like, Gothic is, of course, something where there's something supernatural, something omnipresent. There's some kind of darkness to whatever the community is. Southern, obviously, they're in the South. Usually when it's Southern, there's racism, there's, misogyny, there's all kinds of people not being accounted for. There's a lot of, like, huge areas where it's just all the land, or the swamps, or like a land where nobody's living on, and like where towns have died, and then the towns are like, the people are sort of in these smaller communities, but there's vast spaces in between all of them. So it's like, basically, it's like a serial killer's dream come true, because you could hide bodies or anything, you could just hide anything. I mean, it's just a landscape of decay and ruin. it's, and then like Russ says at one point, what is this metaphor? It's like, this town is like the memory of a town gone wrong, or, like something where it's just like, this isn't even like a real place, it's almost just like, already it's broken down. Like there's no hope. But, and there is a lot of like severely sleazy things going on. Like there's this traveling church, these tent revivals where people are like speaking in tongues. I think it's almost Pentecostal, but as it turns out, it's so gross. It's like the cult is like pulling children or young adults, I mean like teenage or younger, they're pulling their victims out of these, they sort of, these church meetings. That's like kind of the hunting ground. Like everything, like basically the whole thing is about evil not as one person. Like at first there's this really weirdo guy who's got cuts all over his face. He's like 6'4" or something. He's very like big and scary, I guess. But he like mows lawns and he does painting for like the church. But it's like, it turns out, what's his name, Errol Childress. It turns out that he's the one who's been committing the majority of these really horrific acts, and he's built like this whole, not just his house, but all on his property. They call it Carosa. I'm gonna say that right. It's the land of basically where evil is. It's supposed to be mythical. It's supposed to be based on like an old horror story. H.P. Lovecraft even wrote about it, where it's like this like a wicked place, and it's like he's built this whole sort of labyrinth, and it's above ground, but it's all like hidden in this, like, what do you want to call it, but it's like nature is used kind of as like this backdrop, and it's like this tunnel that he has decorated with all his like weird, it's almost like Santeria, like voodoo stuff, and that's where a lot of the rituals happen. And anyway, the whole point of it, and it's weird, it's like his girlfriend is like his half sister, and I mean there's just all this weird intergenerational relations, like crossbreeding. It's just disturbing. Pretty much like every stereotype of like Southern poverty you can think of is in this show. And anyway, and the whole point is that everybody in the town wants a monster to be found. They want to find out who is the, like almost like they want a serial killer found. They want like one man to go down for all this. Like there has to be like a mastermind. Like they think there's like some psychopath, some like one, they can point everything to this person. But what they end up finding out, all the research and all their detective work, is that yeah, there's the psychopath, sure, or sadistic sexual deviant / killer. Yes, there is him and his, whatever associates, family members, whatever he's dragged into this mess with him. But why has he been allowed all these like 17 years to be getting away with all this? How is this hidden for so long? And what you end up finding out is like, it's a system. The town, they just want stability. They don't really ask a lot of questions. They're kind of afraid of being in other people's business. They gossip a lot, but they don't confront anybody. Like, nobody's ever asking questions. Everybody's ignoring everything. Everybody's sweeping everything under the rug. And what it ends up doing is like there's this whole network of like, just like the real case, where it's like there's police involved at the detectives department, several of them in high positions are involved in this cult. There's politician involved in it. I think it's the mayor. And it's like they have all these community projects, this like well-known family that the mayor is part of. And like that serial killer guy, like he's like a bastard child out of that same last name. But it's like they're all in on it together. Like, it's a whole network of who you would think the community would be looking to, you know. And the gross thing is like they have this weird moment where you find out that the church is heavily involved in like the local schools and funding money into them for like special programs and charity work. Well, that's just another way for them to recruit for their disgusting practices. So basically the whole point is that it's this huge, enormous underground system of all these institutional groups that are supposed to be protecting the public, but they're not. They're all basically like raping their children is what they're doing. And it's all like powerful people are covering up for each other. Like, the system works because people don't, like, I know that there's like big companies, like the whole thing, like Erin Brockovich, like she sues the water company or whatever because they're polluting the water. You know, like that's like a conspiracy of a huge corporation. It's kind of like in this place, there's no like one giant like Exxon or one giant company. It's like a lot of them, you know, and like nobody ever considers that the reason this killer gets away with this cult, the reason this cult goes on for so long is because it's a whole system of people working underground, really. I mean, not underground, but in silence. Just like the silence that the families have about the acts of abuse, sexual perversion, or domestic violence or control or whatever the heck they're doing with the younger people in their families, generation after generation. It's like it's just all feeding into this. It's basically like, because nobody will face anything or bring anything up that's disturbing, all these things are just left to multiply. You know, the families are not addressing their patterns. The communities are choosing stability over truth. The officials are protecting each other. The communities are are blind. It's more like don't ask, don't tell kind of blindness, though. Anyway, and I think overall, like, most of these people are so poverty-stricken and so, like, in survival mode, especially from all the traumas that they've been through, and then, like, Hurricane Katrina and all that. Hurricane Katrina becomes this huge thing because it's like they're picking up children and women from the storms that are, and then saying they're missing, but they're not. They're like put into this cult as, you know, for sex trafficking or whatever. And it's just like all these opportunities where good things could have been happening, they're not, because everything's perverted. I'm going to have to make another video about Batman. I'm totally running out of time. Anyway, it's all about stagnation and exploitation, and how that all the wealth that is made in those communities all goes outward. None of the people get it. There's a lot of abandoned schools, broken houses, vast wastelands, and it almost seems like people are so focused on the church, because it's like their lives are so full of pain and no chance of getting out of any of this, just handing it down to other generations. So it's like the church that turns out to be as corrupt is like where they're really turning to get their support and to get through the days that are not that appealing to be living. So like everything's kind of backwards. Like the town just sort of is backwards. And Carcosa, that's what the civilization, that's what the imaginary civilization is called. That I was pronouncing it wrong. Anyway, I'm just gonna stop it here, and then I'll just do another video tomorrow on the villain archetypes. All right, thanks.